go ahead and start recording. This session is going to be posted on our YouTube page afterwards, so we'll go ahead and share that link towards the end, but thank you for being here today.
Welcome everyone to the very first Virginia panelist with some of our former state and national judges. We are joined here today with two long-term judges at this point. We have two more that are probably going to join us here in a moment. We'll just let them pop in. We'll start with Leslie Jones, who has been a judge for many, many years at the state and national level. She is a former FBLA advisor and business and information technology teacher. So she has a really good view of the competitive events from all different aspects of the association, from the advisor standpoint as well as from the judge standpoint. And then Mr. Dan Mcgregor, who is has also been a long-term judge for the state. Mr. Mcgregor, have you judged at the national level?
Just the one time.
Yeah. So these individuals are friends of Virginia FBLA for sure. They always, whenever we put a call to judges, are some of the first people to sign up, and they've been doing it for a long time. And so I thought it might be good to get some insight from their perspective, as well as some helpful tips and things. So I'd like to start out the panel with you guys introducing yourself, and then maybe telling a little bit about your experiences as a judge at our conferences and with the students. So we'll start with you, Ms. Jones.
I'm sorry, if you can clarify for me again, you want good and bad experiences or just experiences?
Just something funny and light to, and it can be good or bad experiences, just something to share with the group of, you know, kind of maybe something you remember.
We participated in nationals, I think it was 2 years ago in Texas, and really enjoyed ourselves. And one of my favorite things to do is to participate in the competitive events where I get to use my theater skills and interact by being a customer of sorts, and that kind of thing is very fun for me, and donning a new persona and pretending to be somebody else and experiencing the improv. So that's one of my absolute favorites. And I think it was 2 years ago, it was something about a natural disaster had happened, and so my husband and I pretended to be the couple from the commercial where the woman, her she shed is burning down, and he's just standing there, and so we pretended to be that couple, and so we're hoping that the students also had some fun with it. But that was our scenario that we had in our mind as we were making the call to the insurance company for assistance.
I love it. All right, Mr. Mcgregor.
Well, I don't know that I have a funny story like that. But I tell you that the most, the event that had the biggest impression on me was a state, I think it was the national competition that I judged at. There was a party of 3 students presenting in this particular competition, and the first 2 students did extremely well, very well. And then the third person started to speak. I can tell you she spoke with so much poise and eloquence, and from such a place of strength, confident in her knowledge of the topic. It just was so impressive. And perhaps that experience kept me coming back, to see that sort of light bulb light up. Just a wonderful experience. I guess the only funny story I have is in judging, I've had an opportunity where my daughter, who's gone through FBLA, was the timer, and she tells me that I bounced my foot up and down when I was judging, listening to the students. So just a comment there that we're just as nervous as you are. So feel awkward.
Okay, I think at this point then we will open the floor up to questions. And Mr. Western, are we allowing people to turn their microphones on? How are you handling this?
So if you have any questions for our panel, please go ahead and type them in the chat. So to access the chat, you are going to go down to the little purple and white arrow that's down in the bottom right, and you should see an everyone chat. Go ahead and type questions here. We are still waiting on a couple more panelists, so we'll have all of our former judges answer any questions that you have.
Oh, note cards is absolutely fine. I'm sorry, I just saw that one. Note cards are absolutely fine. Encouraged. Have some facts down and have your order down. Absolutely. Team members taking the lead. I believe that most of the judges' forms, you get scored according to equal participation in all speakers. So I think most of the time you're looking for all people to present.
Yeah, I didn't see the note card, so thank you, Ms. Jones, for picking that up. I would say that the note cards are great, but I wouldn't just read them.
Right.
You know, this is about how you present and how you present your confidence and how much you know about the information. And just reading the note card might not send that right message. The cards know the answer, but you might not. Is sort of the theory there.
Very correct.
And I agree about it should be not equal participation, but everybody should talk. Everybody should have a role to play.
Sahas Gowda asked, what is the most irritating habit a competitor can do in a presentation?
The item that sort of turns me away from candidates, if you will, or competitive individuals is the use of crutch words, we call them. The ums, the so's, the likes. You know, try to stay away from those type of terms when you're speaking about a topic that you're supposed to have some knowledge about.
I think it's for me it's just getting started. It's when I've been given a handshake ahead of time, or if I'm scoring and you're walking in and you're setting up, and then you come in and you need to shake my hand and I'm not able to finish what I'm doing for the previous person. Shake at the beginning, shake at the end. Don't shake both, and certainly do not try to crush my hand. I don't need that. And so for me, it's a lot of times somebody I can get put off just in when that happens, and not necessarily listening well when things start.
Anitha asked, what makes a competitor stand out in speaking events?
I think it's what you just said. It's that poise and knowing what you're talking about, and you're actually prepared. You read the scenario, whatever it is, or you know your speech, and you are incredibly articulate. It's such a pleasure, and that you're, as a judge, you get excited because you got somebody in front of you who you can check all those boxes for, and check them in a good way on the rating sheet.
Right. Right. I agree with all that.
Yaqueen says, what do you look for when judging? I guess maybe that would be, what qualities are you looking for when you're judging an event?
I would say that I think some people maybe try to put too much emphasis on eye contact at times. It's not something that I require, if you will, that the competitors look at me. If they've got to look off to get their thoughts together, that's completely fine. It's the poise, I think, that just sort of impressed me with that story that I told you earlier. That's sort of what really impressed me and makes the difference in the scoring, I think, at the end of the day.
I'm just going to agree there, and what we've said previously.
Right. Okay, Mariana asks, will the presentation be judged on how tidy your surroundings are? Also, what happens if your audio cuts out while you are presenting? And I assume this she's talking about through virtual competitions. And you did this for the national level. Mr. Mcgregor, you did not do that, right? Yeah. So maybe you can address that.
I honestly don't remember, I think, that happening. I think that if I did see that, I would watch my clock to see what the time was and hope that the person's going to notice what's going on and be able to then sort of give them back that kind of a time, or that they end early enough that we're still well within the window, or if it's, needs to be the penalty, it needs to be the penalty. But luckily that did not happen. So I didn't have to make that kind of call.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Did you pay attention to the surroundings during the virtual competitions?
A little bit. I think when they were distracting more so, but otherwise I didn't factor them. So did I notice it? Yes. Did I factor it in? No. Because that's not on the rating sheet. So that would have been, I would have been bringing in my own opinion as opposed to anything else.
And I'll add to that too. Somebody had asked this question. I judged at the NLE because we didn't have any presenting candidates in, so I helped judge. And I had a student who had a stuffed deer head behind them, and that was completely inappropriate for that type. So I think backgrounds do matter. Okay. Nina wants to know, what is your opinion on the mantra, fake it until you make it?
I don't think I've heard that one before.
I definitely have, and I'll say yes, but this goes back to what we were saying about somebody actually knowing their stuff and things like that. And so it's okay. It's okay if you absolutely have nothing else to rely on, but I'm sad if you're doing it, because you're not going to get your best score if that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I would say, look, I don't know where that comment came from, fake it until you make it, but I would say that if you're talking about your presentation, you were supposed to be somewhat prepared, or at least have read it before you read the scenario before you came into the room, right? If you're talking about a give and take on a Q&A situation, faking it could be just, okay, let me repeat the question until it makes sense in my head, and then I can respond to it with some articulation, with some breadth of knowledge. So if that's what they're referring to, I think it's a matter of pausing and collecting your thoughts before you actually blurt out an answer.
All right, the next two questions are kind of related. So Ms. Holt and Rhea have asked, if you mess up, is it better to ignore your mistake and keep moving forward? And if not, then what do you think is the best way to handle a mistake when you're presenting?
I think I want to own it. I mean, I don't think that's a problem. I think that if you're doing your presentation and suddenly you get to a point and you realize, oh, but the answer to blah was, or I should have said, and it's like, I'd like to just make a correction. And then you could go back to whatever that point in time is and do the massage that you need to, and then come back to where you are. But I think I'd rather you have your aha moment and see it than for you to ignore it and let the wrong information sit. Mistakes happen. That's not, we know that you're here at the spur of the moment. You had, 7 to 10 minutes to prepare and all that kind of stuff. And so I think just owning that and accurately correcting it is a much better choice than pretending like it didn't happen.
I agree. Just own it. It depends where you are in your presentation. If you're almost at the very end, you just remembered something from your opening, I think you have to weigh that as, okay, I can't go back to the start over, right? If it's something of clear fact, as Ms. Jones just alluded to, and you want to make sure you got the right fact on the table, I think you do have to own it and put it on the table correctly.
You're muted.
Okay, so I'm trying to do not the background noise, because I keep getting some feedback. I'm hoping you don't. So a follow-up question is, if a student forgets what they were saying and you have that, pregnant pause there in the middle, how's the best way to handle that type of situation? And they've just forgotten what they were saying.
Is the student solo in this case? Is that what we're assuming?
Yeah, if they're doing a public speaking event and they're in the middle of their speech and they've lost their place, how do they handle that? What's the best way, do you think?
I think I'm sorry, and then you go back to where you can, right? I mean, I don't see any other way to hide it. If you've completely forgotten what you're saying, it's pretty obvious to everybody, I think. So.
Yeah, and I would just say it happens to everybody from sometime in their life or sometime in their presentations. So it's pick up where you can remember to pick up and move on. I forgot a part of my speech at my daughter's wedding. I mean, it happens.
And she still forgave you.
And she still loves me. Yes, it's amazing.
All right, another question. Do you prefer we use a hook or sentence to spark interest or just jump into the facts?
Oh, I love a hook.
Yeah, me too. Me too. A quick opening, a powerful opening, boy, that gets a judge hooked to the whole speech. Yes.
Good. All right.
And better yet, come back to it at some point in time in some way, shape, or form. Don't just have it dangle. I think that you make your case better if you can wrap up to it, or at least one other point in time, make reference to it also. That would be the extra little piece.
Great. Yeah, it's a great point.
In an interview event, what have competitors done in the past to set themselves apart from other competitors, and did it have a positive or negative impact?
Being confident is definitely a great thing. And sometimes I've had somebody that had a unique take on the situation, and I'm going to say, and in a good way, so that's been helpful. Being dressed impeccably is wonderful because then you're not distracting. It's like you said, the deer head was distracting to you. Being not distracting is fabulous. So if you're checking all the boxes and I'm not going, what shoe, or that kind of thing, that I'm not thinking about that, that's wonderful too.
Yeah, I've only done a couple of interview events, and everybody who walked through the door was very impressive. I don't know what made the winners stand out. It was probably the hardest event I ever judged.
Okay. What is the mistake you see, Sarah wants to know, most often in public speaking? And I don't know if you've judged public speaking or not.
I'm sorry, what was the question about public speaking again?
What is the mistake you see most often in public speaking?
Let me check on that.
What was that?
She'll be right back.
She must have a vision for somebody.
Her husband is also a judge, so.
Oh, okay. The biggest, the single mistake that individuals make, I think, is it goes back to the poise issue. But if you're in a public speaking event, there's a lot of confidence. You're expected to show a lot of confidence in what you're saying and how you're presenting yourself. And I think the people that come in and sort of don't have that air of confidence about themselves is sort of the biggest mistake I've seen. We're not there to judge your confidence. It's just something you have. And you should have. So.
Okay, so what my person who's done that event multiple times just said was not compensating for the room. So it's having a large speech when there's only 2 people in a relatively small room, or talking only 1 person when there's 2 people or 3 people judging. Those were some of the things that were noticed, and not in a good way.
They're good. Good.
Ms. Martin wants to know, in the virtual environment this year, what are your tips for competitors to introduce themselves and exit virtually? That's a good question.
We're still trying to figure that out in the commercial world.
I think that the people that, so people would start their timers, and I could hear them start their timers, and I was really appreciative of the ones that said, and I'm starting my timer now, and putting it down. And then they would they looking straight at the camera and introduced who they are, where they're from, and then sort of transitioned into getting to do their speech, pretty much just like going to the booth would have been normally. But that starting the timer, and I loved hearing the timer go ding, 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 because then we all knew that it had gone off, and I just really appreciated the people that did their presentations that way.
Okay. All right. And so House wants to know, in speaking events, when people bring up anecdotes or stories, what are some cliche stories to avoid, and what are some of the most compelling stories you've heard?
Well, one of the rules of thumb I always have with presenting is to know your audience. So if you're going to put a cliche in there and you have 3 judges you've never met before, you got to be really careful what your topic is and how that's going to come off. So you might want to practice it on 2 or 3 people that you know before you bring it into the presentation.
Okay. The events that I have done, I'm sorry, I don't get stories, people, because it's usually some sort of scenario or something, so that I haven't experienced that before.
Okay. Ellie Marmo said, "Hi, and thank you so much for coming today. Do you look at anything differently when judging an individual versus partners and groups?"
I don't look at it any differently, except for the fact there's supposed to be a shared responsibility for the presentation. If it's 2 people, did both of them act or present the appropriate amount of time, or have a strong presence in the presentation? But there's no difference if it's a group versus one. You're looking for the poise, the confidence, and the content. So.
Yeah, correct. Again, it just goes back to that. It's supposed to be somewhat equal, and I try to listen for, it wasn't one person that did 90% of the work and 2 people are standing there just mostly fillers, to say it's supposed to be a team event, so we're here, we're more body count, as opposed to actually knowing about the project or knowing the content also.
All right. Ms. Holt wants to know what your thoughts are on matching outfits for teams.
I don't really have an opinion. I don't have an opinion. I mean, it looks good when they walk in the door, but I don't have an opinion.
It's not necessary. It's nice, but it's not necessary.
You don't think it impacts the final score. Is that
No.
No.
okay?
I can't think of a time that I've marked somebody up because they took the extra time. I'd rather somebody put some extra time into their content than to put extra time into wardrobe shopping.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Where is the line between unique and interesting and simply weird? Not sure that what Jonathan meant with that. Have you had any simply weird?
Oh yeah, I have. There was a young man who was absolutely fabulous and absolutely unique. But so when he walked in, I was just like, whoa, this guy's over the top. I think his suit was pink and shiny and all this other stuff. But his presentation was immaculate. His suit was immaculate. It was just very colorful. And because his presentation was perfect, he had the highest score of the day for the people that I talked to. And so even though the initial impact was a woo, it was, again, it's all about checking the boxes in the rubric, and he did so.
Okay. I have a question about the rubrics. When you are filling out the rubrics, and say you have a team in there and you're judging, or an interview that you're judging, what makes it easier for you to fill out the rubric? Is it that they follow the rubric in their presentation, or is there something else?
For me, when I start with the rubric, I look at the column that is, and I'm sorry, I'm having to try to remember, the column that is the expected.
Exceeds expectations?
No, it's the one below that one where it's like I expect this. Meets expectation. Thank you. I start in the meets expectation column after I've got my imagination of what I think the good presentation should look like. And then I go up or down from there. So my default is that they're going to meet my expectation. And then I go, did they? Or was it, that little bit better? Or was it unfortunately not quite what I was anticipating? I think the ones that make me the most sad are when I have to check did not show or did not do because I want to give some points and then I can't because they just did not tackle whatever that point is that's so clearly identified on the rubric. Like one of the common ones is for copyright. When somebody tells me that it's okay, this is an educational product, so they don't have to worry about copyright, that's a ding, 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 ding for me because, yeah, you do. And you're not doing, and by telling me that you're not, you're ignoring this really important thing that people in this job have to do, or at least make sure that in your presentation you've acknowledged that that we took some liberties because I'm still a student type thing, as opposed to just saying, oh, we didn't have to worry about that. Please mention the fact that a copyright is a very important thing and that we do need to honor it. This is people, some musicians' hard work. We need to honor it, that kind of thing. Did say who it was.
Mr. Mcgregor?
Can you repeat the question? That was a great answer. I was so enthralled with the answer, I don't think I remember the question accurately.
What makes it easier for you to fill out the rubric when you have a presentation? Is it for the students to follow the rating sheet, or do you think that's not important?
Yeah, I don't know how the students would follow the rating sheet anyway. In most cases, maybe a little different than Ms. Jones' approach to it. I do sort of start in the middle. I'm probably a lower grader than most judges, I would call. My scores tend to be the consensus group wins. I don't think I've had many disagreements with other judges, but my scores are lower, whereas 90s or 80s might be on the other score sheets. Mine might be 70 or 60. And I think that's just how I play it. You've got to come in and evaluate the first group, and then you're sort of evaluating every group after that. right? Are they better than that first group, or are they a little not as good as the first group? And you're sort of weighing them all against that measurement. And then the next group comes in. Now you have a population of 2 that you can use as a guidepost, if you will. It's not about the students following the rubric. That's not possible, I don't think.
I agree completely. That's not what's important. It's did they do what was in it, not did they do it in that order.
Right. Agreed.
Okay, Mr. Western put up there the link to all the rating sheets. And speaking of events, when all quote-unquote things are equal between competitors, meaning points, what serves as the tiebreaker, and how much, if at all, does the first speaker that one judge's influences the bar for the other, if that makes sense? Kind of makes sense? I think kind of what you said is you rate them all off the first one, sort of. But yeah, what is a tiebreaker for you?
I don't know that there's one single tiebreaker. I mean, somebody's going to come out with the better presentation, the better speaking experience, if you will, at that particular moment in time, and that's going to be the one. That's going to be what judges will slide the extra points toward. And
that's where those little things come into play, I think. You talked about somebody pausing in the middle and forgetting something. Somebody maybe not being, one of the other things I'll do is somebody had a really good point. So, somebody mentioned having a great hook at the beginning, that kind of thing. It's like that helps you stand apart. And for me, that other big piece is having something unique about their presentation or speech, or they hit a point that nobody else hit that is just, yes, that's it, that kind of thing. And so mentioning a term that nobody else used. So those kinds of things are also ways to go, okay, if I have to weigh these 2, that's what I heard from this other group, and that's where I'm going to give them that extra point to break this tie.
All right. Next question is, will nervous laughing, or in general, if the person is able to deliver a crafted argument and keep eye contact, save the fact that they may be smiling a bit too much, will that hurt their performance score?
I've never heard anybody who smiles a lot. A friendly face is always something good to see. I don't think a nervous laugh necessarily will detract from the score either. It's really what is behind that.
What about, isn't there usually a section that's about the professionalism of the presentation or the confidence of the person in their presentation? And I think then that if that's a 5, I might give that person a 3 or 4 instead of being able to give them a full 5 and saying they exceeded my expectations.
So I have a question that you guys sit on a judging panel, and there's usually 2 or 3. There's usually 1 or 2 other people in the room with you. And do you guys do the judges talk between judges? Do you think you influence each other's scores, or is it something that you just sit and you do your score, the other judge or judges do their scores, and then you do the consensus addition and to see who wins? How do you handle that?
I usually, it's usually, again, looking at that rubric and saying, my question is usually, did I miss something? I don't think I heard anything about, I'll put out copyright again, and then the other person will say, yeah, no, you didn't. Or they're supposed to talk about SWOT analysis or something, and you're like, did anybody hear that? And it's like, no, okay, just checking. And so that helps me go to that meets and go down or up because I didn't hear it or I did, and just, I don't want to mark them down because I didn't hear it, even though, yes, they did say something. So a lot of times I'll double check that stuff to make sure I'm putting my score in the right place.
Yeah, I would say that in most experiences that a single comment from each judge after each performance, if you will, has always been sort of the standard. they were really good, or I really like this about that. I give you a sense of where one judge is going, but I don't know that it influences the other judges.
Okay, Namita wants to know, what should you do if you're unsure of the answer to a question that the judge asked during the Q&A?
Could you repeat that? And I don't mean I want you to. No. Could you repeat that?
Oh. Okay, you got me.
Or to clarify, are you asking blah, 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 blah? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, buy yourself some time. You know, repeat the question, meaning not only not to ask the judges to repeat the question, but sort of rephrase the question yourself back to the judges as part of your answer. Gives your mind a chance to kind of catch up with the situation, and maybe something comes to you in the meantime.
All right. Okay, do we have any more questions? Well, I think I'd like to wrap up, first of all, by thanking you both very much for being with us today. I really appreciate, we've had several comments about appreciating the insightful responses, and so I do think the students and advisors all, this is just such a good activity. So if you could just wrap up with maybe one or two pieces of advice as the students are getting ready for their competitions this year, which will in essence be done mostly virtually, but live virtually, hopefully. Any advice for the students for this year?
You get to go first this time.
Okay. I don't know that I have any specific advice. Again, most of the students that I've come across in my years of judging have been tremendous in presenting and putting together their presentations, and know that we're as awed by you guys as you may be nervous about presenting to someone you've never seen before. We're in awe about how you all come to the table prepared and with this skill set that I have to tell you, when I was 18 or 15, I never would have imagined having. So again, just be confident. Know that we're probably just as nervous as you are.
I think for me, if I haven't said it enough, please review the rubric and know it, and have that mental checklist going if at all possible to go, yes, I covered everything. Yes, you know, because you don't want to leave any points on the table. That's a way to put it. Don't leave any points on the table if you can avoid it.
Excellent advice. Well, thank you both very much, and thank you to all the students and advisors that joined us here today. And we appreciate this, and we're looking forward to having our competition start in December, and hoping that Ms. Jones and Mr. Mcgregor will be judging for us in March and April this year. So we'll be in touch. And you're getting a lot of thank yous now, so.
Well, thank you all for letting me help.
Well, I think it's the first time I haven't judged in 15 years. It was devastating.
Oh, I know. It was devastating for us too. I'm not joking. It was awful. The weekend of the conference, my husband was like, "You are not fit to live with."
Exactly.
I was like grumpy and sad.
It was the first time I think I'd missed the conference since 1994. So it was like, no, you've ruined my streak.
Sorry, it wasn't me. It was
No,
the
it wasn't you.
governor.
It was the COVID. It was the COVID.
Oh. Because Nick can tell you, I was still saying up until the last minute, we are going to have a conference. And then there was no way for any of the schools to pay for it. We were already so much in the hole financially that, we had to just say, okay, let's cut our losses.
And she had said, unless the governor says no conference, we're having a conference, and then the governor said no conference.
And who had to break the news to her?
Well, the board, but I was kind of grumpy on the board call too. It was the board. Judy Sams handled it well. She didn't tell me, Sandy, stop, but she kept trying to tell me, I know you want this to work for the kids, but it may not work for the kids. And so I think that was, and then Stephanie was saying that Judy handled it much better than her. My issue was I had to call the state president and tell her, and I wept. I wept. And I was the most embarrassed I've ever been in my life, I think. I just couldn't talk because I was so emotional about, but I know what she missed. She doesn't know what she missed. And my heart broke for all those kids because it was a wonderful group of students. And then I had to call the team and tell them. I think I handled that a little bit better. I had my act together by then. But, telling the state president, and I thought I owed her the call